you moving to LA was my moving to New York of the moment of the grit.
So I understand. It's kind of like, I think for now, in our 30s hearing this, you're like, oh my God, we'd never do that. But like
in your 20s.
In your 20s, you
that's
do
the time
this
to do
because,
it, though. Yeah.
because you're like, this is my livelihood. This is me pursuing whatever I'll always
My dream.
My dream,
Whatever
exactly.
I think my dream is.
One of the biggest changes I'm going through this year is that I'm moving to a new city, the city of all new cities. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'm moving to New York City.
Wow, that is a big, big shift. Going cross country, moving in with a partner for the first time. So many big changes. I remember when I moved to New York and I had that kind of period in my late 20s. So today we wanted to kind of like reminisce about what it's like to have your New York moment.
Yes.
For those of you who have been tuning into our episodes recently, you will know that Mel is moving to New York City. For anyone who didn't catch the previous episodes where we talked about that, if you haven't, you should go back and check it out because we have a full episode where she talks all about how this decision came about. But maybe give us a brief overview again. Why have you decided to move to New York City? And is it ever a place that you dreamed of going to when you were little? Like living or moving to New York City?
Yeah. So it's funny, by the time this episode comes out, I'll be there. Hello, New York.
Yeah.
So the main reason why I'm moving, there's two things. One, Ray, my boyfriend, actually got a promotion, which brings him to headquarters in New York. So I think once this opportunity was presented to him, we're talking about should you take it? And I was like, you should take it for sure. And he's like, would you move with me? And I was like, yeah, I would.
Let's talk about when this conversation first started.
I think it happened in almost, I want to say September
of 2023.
23. So it's actually been in motion and talks for a while.
Why does it feel like it's been longer than that?
I think when I was talking to you and Helen, it's more like, it might happen, it might not.
That's right.
It's a lot of like a maybe. And I think as the months progressed, the percentage of it happening became higher.
Yeah.
And I think by the time it was official, I only had 2 months to figure out the move.
Right.
Yeah. And I think I will say the timing was kind of perfect because when Ray asked, would you move with me? I was feeling like a little bit of like, I am seeking a sense of adventure and like, I do want to try a different place. And LA was feeling really monotonous to me as much as I love SoCal. So I think it just kind of happened at the right time. The funny thing is though, when you asked me about like, have I ever dreamed about New York? I never dreamed about moving anywhere outside of California, maybe besides Taiwan. But I know New York is a very sought out city to live in. A lot of my friends after college moved to New York because it is a fantastic city to live in. But I had never had the inkling of living there until maybe like last year and the year before I started visiting New York more often. I actually didn't go to New York a lot in my 20s or visit as a kid.
Yeah.
So in the last 2 years I visited and I just found myself being in awe of the city. I was like, oh. And you know that feeling of like, I could kind of see myself living here. You know, that starts kind of trickling into your brain. So it was in the back of my mind, but I never was like, I want to live here, which I know may be very different for our listeners. And Janet, I know for yourself, you actually did a stint in New York.
I did. And I had a very much more like romanticized idea of New York City. And I think it was growing up watching all of those movies and TV shows. In high school, I just remember always feeling like, I grew up in Orange County, Mission Viejo. It's a great place to live, but it's very suburb, very protected.
Yeah.
And boring, to be honest. Like when you're a young kid or just a young adult and you're wanting to think about like exploring and living life. And so I was in San Francisco at the time and feeling similarly an itch for something different. And I recalled back to when I was in like high school and growing up, what were adventures that I always sought? And to me, the idea of going to New York City and being able to work in, I don't know, a big industry there. And for their advertising was the big industry. So when I went and did my career shift, I thought to myself, I'm going to move to New York City and I'm going to work in advertising. And I had this glorified, glamorized view of what that would be like. Kind of like Sex in the City-ish was like what I had in my head.
You know, it's funny the way when you're talking about like you like the romanticize the city. I didn't do that until like the last 2 years too.
Yeah.
It came on like I think watching Sex and the City, watching Modern Love, and I found myself gravitating towards
Modern Love.
any pieces of art or like
Mm.
video or any like shows or series that like took place in New York. I was like, I was drawn to them.
Yeah.
Kind of like how you were as like in high school.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more delayed.
I mean, a lot of like for you, what do you think the nature of watching those shows or those movies, or like what does that inspire for you?
I keep saying charm and magic.
Mm.
This might be a little tangent, but the reason for me New York wasn't expected was because when I moved to SoCal, that was it for me. Like I actually loved Irvine. I loved the cookie cutter, the city. I liked everything kind of like well designed, convenient. Obviously, LA is not convenient, but I thought when I moved to LA, I was done. That was it.
That was yep.
And I didn't and I didn't expect to feel this restlessness. And I didn't expect to feel my life is so monotonous because I thought because LA was my dream.
Right.
Yeah, and I think obviously. I think we talked about this in very early episodes of ABG, but what I didn't recognize in my 20s is that your dream is going to evolve and change. So being here now is like, oh, I didn't expect it, but I'm here.
I love that your dream for New York has like started only kind of like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
You started dreaming of New York in your 30s.
I did.
And you're having that kind of moment now for a different time and a period of change.
I've always believed that small actions add up to make a big difference. Simple things like taking your vitamins every day can have big long-term benefits. That's why Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic is a part of my daily routine. Every day, I take 2 little capsules that support my gut, skin, and heart health. It's a small daily action that makes me feel good knowing that I'm taking care of myself. If you've tried other probiotic supplements, you know that they usually require refrigeration. But not Seed. They have a patented capsule-in-capsule design that keeps the probiotic and prebiotic formulas separate to ensure shelf stability and bacterial viability without needing to be refrigerated. So it's easy for me to continue this daily habit even when I travel. Which brings me to their travel vial. It's this mini container that you get for free with a welcome kit. It's this beautiful and lightweight glass tube that slips easily into any toiletry bag so that you can continue taking care of your gut even when traveling. Because probiotics and prebiotics work best when used consistently. Trust your gut with Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic. Go to seed.com/ABG and use code 25ABG to get 25% off your first month. That's 25% off your first month of Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic at seed.com/ABG. Code 25ABG.
So I asked you kind of like, what about those like shows, movies that draws you in? Because I think for me, a lot of the romanticization of what New York represented was opportunity.
Oh.
And, you know, I think being in such New York is large, but for the number of people in such a small space and all the different types of people that are there, you just know that in any given day, like you don't know who you're going to run into, what opportunity. And a lot of the things that's like, there's a component to New York that's like, you can plan all you want, but things are not going to go to plan. And you learn to see that as like really beautiful thing because some of the best experiences that you'll have will be very unexpected. So I think there was some component for me, the romanticization of it just being such like an unknown and being able to put yourself out there to not only be challenged, but also to like this idea that you don't know, you kind of want to see what you're made of.
Yeah.
And it's a city that will challenge you and kind of help you understand what you might be made of.
Oh, I kind of, it's funny. I love the way you described it. Mine's a little different, I think.
Yeah, sure. What's
yeah,
yours?
actually, now that we're talking about it, I think for me, obviously, I mentioned like I started going to New York the last 2 years more frequently.
Yeah.
And for me, I think also the last 2 years, I decided I became more active. Like LA for me worked before because I was like, I love driving. I hate walking.
This is true.
Y'all know me. I hate that stuff.
Mel was when we would have to walk like a block or two to anywhere. You're like, oh, I don't want to do this.
Exactly. So I don't think I really enjoyed walking until the last few years. And so when I visited New York, I was like, wow, it's so convenient.
Yes.
I don't need my car. I love it. And I think the difference for me with LA and New York is that being in New York, like you're literally walking, but you're just in wonderment the whole time, just looking at everything.
Yeah.
And again, of course, I'm in this period of my life where I feel like I'm losing inspiration. I
New
just
York
feel
is a great place to be for inspiration.
literally, you're just sitting there, you're walking. You're just inspired by the energy and what you see around you. And to be honest, I just loved how everyone looked and felt so different than each other, but you could tell they belonged.
Yeah.
And that's the feeling I got. And I was like, wow, like to be honest, I think with LA, like not to say it this way, but even for myself, I moved to LA to pursue media
Right.
and entertainment. Everyone's here. Not everyone, but the people I surround myself here are kind of in the same territory.
Yeah.
That it feels similar. New York, I don't think
homogenous.
it does.
Yeah.
So in New York, I didn't feel that way. I was like, wow, everyone's kind of on their separate grind.
Separate grinds. That is very true. New York is a huge epicenter for everything from fashion to media to finance.
Yeah,
it is. And that's one of the great things is I do feel like you feel this sense of like everyone's on a hustle, but on very different hustles. And you'll be stimulated by so many different types of people. Because that's true. LA is it's like a city where you drive a lot. And then you kind of, once you find your kind of group of people, it is hard to maybe like more spontaneous experiences in LA, I think. Maybe the way that you would in New York City or a city where you're so much by foot and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you shared with us, you Ray had made this proposition and you had in September, and then slowly as it became a reality, you had about like 2 months to start really planning through it. What are kind of the steps that you're taking in planning your move over to New York City?
I think like we mentioned in previous episodes, I have control. I like to have control. So once the idea even started to sink in, I was like, I know nothing about New York. I really don't. So that moment, from like September on, I just started learning about the different boroughs. And I think back then, Ray was like, hey, if this happens, I don't know if I want to live in Manhattan. So I was like, okay, so let me focus on Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And like Queens. So what I did was I would just read about the different boroughs and during my free time or during lunch, or like, let's say I'm working on something more passive, I will literally have a walking tour of a borough on the TV as I'm working.
Wow.
I would be like, Williamsburg, Brooklyn, walking tour, boo. And I'll just I'll keep it on the screen as I'm working and just have a sense of like, oh, this is like the vibe of this borough. Because I knew if we're gonna move there, we're gonna live there. But I can't just book a plane ride and be like, I'm in New York.
Yeah.
I had to like kind of familiarize myself with each borough ahead of time. So that's one thing I did just to like kind of,
Yeah.
And then I started asking friends like, hey, like, what was your experience like living here? And I started compiling research and information.
Yeah.
And so when the 2 months hit, we're like, this is happening. I was like, oh shit.
So you actually started researching before it even became a reality. You already started kind of immersing yourself in this world of like, what are the different boroughs? What are the different neighborhoods?
Exactly. I'm also someone that like, because Ray was like, why are you doing this? It's not for sure. I was like, yeah, but if it's for sure, then I have some ideas. If it's not, then it's okay. I just learned about New York. Or Brooklyn, So I think once the 2 months hit in January and it was like, it's happening, I was like, okay. And like, for my No Dumb Questions with Mel segment, I have a Google segment.
Yeah.
I started Googling moving timeline. And I just like literally just read different articles about like, okay, here are the things, here's like a checklist that you could follow leading up to your move. And I just downloaded the crap out of that, made an Excel sheet and just followed it.
Wow.
Hi, ABGs. How is your metabolic health? If you don't know how to answer this, that's okay. I didn't either. And then I started using Lumen, which is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. How cool is that? Your metabolism is important because it's your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into fuel that keeps you going. And because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, etc. Here is how it works. I breathe into my Lumen device first thing in the morning, and then the app lets me know if I'm burning mostly fats or carbs. And then it gives me a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on my measurements. As someone who focuses a lot on plant-based eating, I'm usually more concerned about my protein intake than anything else. So I appreciate that Lumen is helping me better understand the role of carbs and fats and how much of each I should be consuming for optimal health. If you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me and use code ABG to get $100 off your Lumen. That is LUMEN.me and use ABG at checkout for $100 off. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode.
Okay, I have a question. How did the dynamic with Ray then? Was he like, hey, we should plan this way? Or did he kind of just like let you and he was like, okay, then let's fill out the sheet? Or did he have his like, hey, I have my own sheet?
Yeah, so we planned Asia.
Yeah.
The walking tour, I think in passing we'd be like, oh, this area looks nice. Or we just like kind of like text each other like, oh, my friend said this is nice. So just like random opinions are being dropped just in passing. And then when the planning came, he'll be like, we should really sit down and plan this. And so we got together on a weekend, made an Excel sheet. I dropped my moving list. He dropped all his logistics, and we just started creating an Excel sheet together.
Wow.
We like to sit down and work together type of couple. And then during the week we'll work on it together. And I was like, hey, you're responsible for this. I'm responsible for that. And he already said to me, he's like, Mel, I already know that you're very into the apartments. Like you care about that more. You could focus on that a little bit. And so, but we'll always run the neighborhoods by each other.
Yeah.
So the planning, honestly, like it was a collective effort. And then I just followed a Google timeline. And I think obviously as the months passed and we're like, okay, like in February, we're like, okay, we have to go apartment hunting now because we're moving in March. So we decided to go to New York. Like this is the time to lock in the apartment. So 2 months leading up to it, though, we were already looking on Street Easy, looking at apartments to get the lay of the land.
Yeah.
By the time we landed in New York, we were working with a broker to help us find a place.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know was a thing to do in New York. You could have a broker help you find apartments. They do take a cut of your money, but apparently it's like super helpful.
Yeah.
They have the connections. And so by the time we landed in New York, we already knew what boroughs we wanted and what places that we felt we could afford. And so we were looking at places within that thing.
That frame, yeah.
Yeah. And then we did focus on Brooklyn because we knew it was more affordable and fit our budget. But our broker was like, I have some Manhattan places I just want you guys to look at. And so, we looked at them and we have our opinions. We'll share it in a bit.
Yeah.
But I think once we looked at places and we locked in what we wanted, it moved kind of quickly. And and we just locked in a movie. Ray focused on the moving company. I focused on everything else. Actually, no, we just divided and conquered together. And I think that's how we work best. But yeah, to be honest, it's been stressful because it's so quick.
Yeah.
But it's been pretty seamless working with him.
That sounds so opposite from my experience.
Yeah, because I know. Yeah, I had to. Because obviously, what it is too. We're moving in my 30s.
Yeah. No, it's very different because I went in my, I want to say mid to late 20s. How old am I? But this was like 2011 to 12.
Ooh, okay.
And I, as you're talking about like doing the research with YouTube, I'm like, I know YouTube was around that time, but
I don't think those type of videos existed.
Though, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. YouTube was in existence, but those types of videos where you're just kind of immersing yourself, and it's almost like it's not necessarily entertaining, but like informative type content wasn't really available. And I went to New York via the boot camp program that I was in. So they say in New York City, you're always shopping for one of three things: a home, a job, or a partner. At any given point, like you might have one of those things, but you're always looking to trade up or like change just because things happen so quickly, right? And the catch-22 about wanting to get a job in New York is that they generally look for you to already be in New York City, especially for the industry that I was going into, the specific role, like strategy within advertising. There's not really like job posts, or there are, but in order to, it's like hard to get into. Once you get your first job, then you kind of get into the community of names and stuff, and then it's easier to kind of like work around. But if you are coming from the West Coast like I was and wanting to get a job in New York City, it was a pretty challenging thing. And so I had gone with a program to go in for like a week where it was like speed dating of meetings and all that kind of stuff. And, your people are asking you, oh, do you live in New York City? And then if you reveal that you don't, then they might be like, oh, you're not going to. So I'd be like, yeah, I'm based here,
Yeah.
And then kind of lying and you're thinking like, wait, when am I going to be back? I don't know. And so it was kind of this like not sloppy, but I was pretty much flying by the seat of my pants, like kind of trying there, guided with the program. The program allowed me to get with a group and have all these like access to all these people and these coffee meetings, and like kind of like they are guiding you. They're like, oh, we're going to give you a tour of the advertising studio. And then you learn, oh, this is your opportunity to try to like network and ask for coffee with this person, and then sit down with them and figure out, do they have a job opening? If they click with you, they might have like a random project that comes up, and then they'll bring you on.
So this is part of your boot camp.
This is part of the boot camp program. And this is, mind you, this is the last week after I think like 3 months of just literally like 24 hours you're pumping through.
Got it.
And so I was like,
just to get context, right? I know you did a 3 months program.
Yeah.
But this is the boot camp.
Yes.
And the last because you're being like your last week of the boot camp was you're like going to New York City.
Yeah.
But I thought your boot camp was in Miami.
It was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Boot camp was based in Miami. And the last week you fly yourself out to New York City, but they have arranged so that you have access to then all of these
Gotcha.
All of these people and all these meetings. And so I and I remember like I was trying to save money at the time. So I booked via Airbnb, but I was trying to save money, so I didn't even get a full space. I booked someone's sofa.
I booked a sofa?
I booked a sofa, and this girl ended up being a great contact. And then when I ended up being in New York City for quite some time, and I didn't have like a job in advertising. She's like, oh, I have this contact for this guy that's making this thing for like Vietnam's Next Top Model. They need a production assistant. So I spent, I think it was like a week for maybe a stipend of a couple $100s to try to like guide these people around New York City when I had no idea what I was doing. She's like, you have a phone, you'll figure it out.
Oh my gosh, like a tour guide.
But yeah, I had all of these random experiences where I guess my experience was I had somewhat of an entrance or a guide in there, and then I just felt like I need to try to like make it work out here.
Yeah.
But not having a job offer there, not having an apartment, I ended up coming back to LA, but definitely felt without anyone telling you exactly like, oh, if you want to be in New York, you can continue these conversations. But I was like, if I want a job there, there's this momentum.
Yes.
The more days that pass from when I've graduated from this program and I've had these contacts, the less warm these leads are. So I felt this intense pressure, but I was also really burnt out from the program.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I need to save money. How do I do this if I don't have like an apartment there? And in order to get an apartment there, most people will ask you, do you have a job? So I didn't have a job, and then I also didn't really know anyone out there. I had some like friends of friends, but this was also like, I didn't feel comfortable going out there and asking people. So then I finally was like, okay, you know what? Enough time has passed. I need to at least schedule some time out there. So I booked, and I was trying to go even cheaper than Airbnb. So I went on Craigslist and I found this listing. I don't even remember. I think I like wired someone money or something. I fly in, I get there at 10 p.m. I go via I don't even remember if it was a subway or a taxi. I show up in front of this address that I've paid money for, and it is nothing. It is literally a brick wall.
Shut up, dude.
And I remember I was like, it's 10 p.m. in New York City. I think I knew like one person, and I was like, I don't want to bother her, and she might be sleeping. I know she worked in finance, so she gets up at like 4 or 5 a.m. I did call her. She didn't answer, so I was like, okay, what do I do? And I somehow, I don't remember if I just like then randomly found a hotel, and it was one of those like small 1-person hotels where it's like literally like, it's like a coffin hotel. I don't know. And the whole time I remember like also trying to kind of like talk to my parents. I don't want them to worry. Mom's like, did you get there? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, things are fine. Things are great.
Oh my gosh.
And it was fine. I figured it out eventually, but I just remember being so tired at times there where my phone was also outdated because I was like trying to save money. And so I didn't have like Wi-Fi, and I'm like trying to guide myself around the city. And I'm like, I don't have a home to stay in tonight. It was a hot mess.
Spring is in full bloom, and I'm loving all the days of sun we're finally getting here in Brooklyn. I'm shedding off the layers, and I'm excited to switch out my heat tech for some cute dresses. I have some really fun, form-fitting, colorful skirts I really want to whip out. However, as much as I love their skirts, you guys are really cute, it's not super forgiving. So in order to make sure I feel the most confident in these pieces, I look for some extra support and turn to Honey Love. I have Honey Love's best-selling Super Power Short. It smooths, shapes, and lifts, giving you a flawless silhouette under any outfit. I mean, girl, I look good. The best thing for me is that it actually is super comfortable and it doesn't feel suffocating like a lot of previous shapewears I've tried, and I tried a lot of them. Treat yourself to the best bras and shapewear on the market and save 20% off at honeylove.com/ABG. Use our exclusive link to get 20% off at honeylove.com/ABG. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. The summer vibes are just getting started, honeys. Shape your life with Honey Love. Wait, Tama, I need a recap of this. Sorry, I know it was like
all over the place.
No, let me recap to see what I understand. So it sounds like, okay, the last week of boot camp, you were in New York trying to like network, but didn't go anywhere. And you went back to OC. But obviously the days start passing by. You're like, okay, this is not, you feel like your anxiety is building. I'm like, I need to be back to New York to get this job. So you just book a one-way ticket. After you saw that Craigslist posting, you booked to New York. You get there, it's a brick wall, and you're like, shit. And then you like book a hotel room, and you're just like, now you're here.
Now I'm here.
And then, time out, what happened to the brick wall? Was it a real place?
It was not a real, they gave me an address to, I think it was like a design shop or like some random.
So someone
whatever.
like really.
So I got scammed basically. Yeah.
Did you get your money back?
Nope. That was, yeah.
Oh
And
my-
that actually, for that trip out there, I booked a flight. I think it was like a 1-week trip. So I go
Oh.
out there, no more leads, still don't have a job, come back. And then eventually I was, like tried to still navigate getting more jobs back on the West Coast. So I'm like, no, I need to actually just like go and be there. So
Okay.
I pulled the trigger and I just booked a 1-way flight, brought like 2 suitcases, and I booked an Airbnb for 2 weeks in Hell's Kitchen.
Okay.
And then from there was kind of like, well, I'll figure it out when I get there. We got to figure and if you don't, then I'll just book a flight back, right? But at the whole time, I just felt so much. I think it was probably one of those like more challenging, trying to navigate all of these things in my life at the same time.
It's a lot.
And also some context, like my family was kind of going through some things and I felt personally, and whether they probably were fine without me, whatever it is, but I felt really selfish going out there and pursuing that when I felt like I needed to be home. But at the same time, I was not getting any work, right?
Yeah.
And like I went to this program so that I could get jobs in New York City. So it was a bit of a challenge of me trying to navigate getting to this new city with this new job where I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a home there and I didn't have a job. And you just kind of like, they say you just got to go there and you get one of the 3. And then once you get one of the 3, then it kind of like cycles. And eventually I did, after bouncing around like my Airbnb, I think through a friend of another friend, our friend Tim, he's like, oh, I have a friend that's out there. She travels. She's a consultant. So sometimes she's like not in her apartment. And I remember grabbing coffee with her and meeting her, but just feeling like so, I'm also not the type of personality that likes to ask for help or ask to like, be like, hey, can I like stay at your place? And I was like, I'll pay you. I don't know, like whatever it is. And it taught me also to have to kind of like rely, to be okay with asking for help at times. So I ended up staying at her place near Grand Central Market for like a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And then eventually, after going through a bunch of these like interviews for roommates, so I'm trying to interview for jobs. And I'm also trying to go and interview to be a roommate, right?
Yeah.
And the whole time you just feel like I'm just like trying to sell myself. I'm trying to like, I'm great. Come live with. I'm like, I promise I'll pay rent on time. And then they're like, oh, so you have a job? Like, what's proof of income? I'm like, I'm working on it.
Yeah.
But I eventually ended up in Chelsea.
Oh, that's nice.
And I mean, prices are so different now. But at that time in 2000, I think it was like 2012. I paid $1,300 for 1 of 3 bedrooms in a tiny apartment and shared 1 bathroom between the 3 of us. And one of the girls had a boyfriend who she did not tell me about that would be living in the home with us.
Oh my God.
So it was like 4 of us trying to coordinate between 1 bathroom. Yeah. Sorry, this is not a very organized like recollection.
No.
But I'm just needless to say, I feel like you're like, oh, I have a boyfriend is going, basically you have a natural segue. I feel like I was trying to force my way to New York City. And it was quite the experience.
Yeah. You know what's actually find really interesting? So I'm pretty sure through the episodes, you always say like Janet literally bounced around. Right now, we're literally focusing on one of the bouncing to like hear what happened. Because honestly, that sounds like a freaking
nightmare.
I don't want to say that, but it just sounds like an adventure of a lifetime that was a little chaotic.
It was very chaotic. And to be honest, like, I think it was me trying to push myself to pursue and to try to advance some sort of pursuit or achievement of a dream, right?
Yeah.
And feeling like I was kind of between a rock and a hard place where if I've already sunk enough time and money, into this boot camp, into this industry, and to this dream of getting to the city and working in this industry, and it's not quite happening, how much more do I sink in?
Yeah.
And how much more do I commit? And how much longer do I try to make this work, and what part of it is working and what part of it is not, right? And I think this is, once again, we had in another episode where we talked about, I have a tendency to, when I make a shift and things are happening, I think I can adjust and I can be pretty flexible to things little by little all the time, but sometimes I'm not the most like, I have to kind of pull back and be like, let's take a look at the big picture. Why did you want this? Is it worth it anymore? All those types of things. And New York City is also one of those places where it is not easy to live, and it's not going to be, especially if you grew up on the West Coast and you are spoiled with West Coast weather, and if you add that transition on top of going there when you don't really have a natural job already and you don't already have there's just a lot of things that are uncomfortable about it. But I just kept hearing people say it's always uncomfortable in the beginning. You got to, so it's hard when you're in the moment to distinguish what part of this is
part of the journey and what
part
is
of the
it?
journey, and what part of this is me not trying hard enough? What part of this is the universe being like, hey, maybe this is not for you.
Yeah.
Maybe you can go back home and relax and it's okay, you know?
Oh, that's tough. But the thing is, this sense of grit that you're describing to me, to be honest, I relate to that moving to LA.
Yeah.
You're like,
actually, that is you moving to LA was my moving to New York of the moment of the grit.
So I understand. It's kind of like, I think for now, in our 30s hearing this, you're like, oh my God, I would never do that. But like
in your 20s,
you do this because you're like, this is my livelihood. This is me pursuing whatever I've always
my dream.
My dream, exactly.
I think my dream is.
And I think sometimes you're taught when you go there, because I remember being in LA and I was like, I don't know what my next job is.
Yes. Yeah,
I remember being alone in my apartment, having no interaction because I couldn't. I was afraid to spend money.
Yes.
But these are all parts of the experience because I feel like I think that risk is okay at that time.
Yes.
It feels like it's okay.
Yes.
So I would totally understand why you did what you did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Damn. I need to know more about this New York stuff.
Do you know what the secret is to keep a baby's skin healthy? The secret is a diaper that doesn't leave skin wet. You've heard me talk about Pampers Swaddlers on our podcast many, many times now, and that's because Pampers Swaddlers is the diaper for healthy baby skin. Pampers Swaddlers absorbs wetness better than the leading value brand and provides up to 100% leak-proof skin protection and up to 0% skin irritation. And if you're a fan of Pampers, you've got to check out their new Pampers Free and Gentle wipes, which clean better than Huggies Natural Care and are 5 times stronger, so they resist tearing during a diaper change. With Free and Gentle, mess meets its match. And if you're like me and you love saving and getting rewarded for something you gotta buy anyway, like diapers, don't forget to download the Pampers Club app today and earn Pampers Cash. You can redeem your Pampers Cash for exclusive Pampers coupon savings and rewards. Try Swaddlers with new Pampers Free and Gentle wipes for healthy baby skin. For trusted protection, trust Pampers, the #1 pediatrician recommended brand.
Well, Janet, it sounds like you kind of found yourself in Manhattan. Like, what, Hell's Kitchen? You also were in Chelsea. Was Manhattan always like the neighborhood you wanted to be in when you moved to New York?
For the time, because I was trying to go into advertising, Manhattan made sense. I did also explore Brooklyn and Dumbo, but I think in 2000, I think it was like 10 or something, still the majority of the companies and the jobs were in Manhattan. And so for me, it was exploring where in Manhattan to be. But I like Brooklyn. I went there, but I was spending most of my time in Manhattan.
That makes sense. I feel like nowadays, too, Brooklyn is kind of where everyone,
it's a great scene for creatives. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like I want to say like, maybe the last 10 years, it kind of did get more popular.
Yeah.
Obviously, because it's more affordable, too. Well, for me, I think, going into it, Ray wanted more space. That's something we always said, and we were warned about how small the places are in Manhattan. And again, we are very spoiled to be on the West Coast. LA, we have some
space.
We have some space. And so going into it, and then talking to friends, Brooklyn was always on our list. And so when we walked around Brooklyn, I was like, oh, this is it's so nice. It's quaint.
Yes.
It feels like I think another thing that me and Ray talked about were like, where are we in life? Do we want to be out and about? Do we want to be right next to a bar and feel like we're in this middle of the scene? And we both recognize like, oh, we're not there anymore, actually. We will actually prefer more of a quiet life that feels convenient, but you still get the energy of New York.
Yes.
And so I think when we visited Brooklyn and then our broker was like, I have some places in Upper East Side I want to show you. And I was like, oh, Upper East Side, what is this? Gossip Girl? I was like, sure, we'll check it out. He's like, I have some pre-war buildings I want to show you. And I was like, oh, pre-war, they're so charming. We go there. He was like, it's like 6-story walk up. I was like, oh my God. I was like, so we get there. I was like, oh, this is very charming. I'm out of breath. And I opened the door and I was like, he's like, this is the living room. I was like, you mean the bathroom? And I was like, I don't want to say, but I understand it is a grind in Manhattan. But I was like, oh man, like where I'm at right now, I want a little bit more of comfort.
Yeah. More space.
Exactly. And so the place, I think also being in Manhattan in the city, it was cool. The energy was there. It's like, I was like, man, I'm definitely in the heart of the city. But for some reason, there's this charm about Brooklyn that I just really liked. And so I was like, I kind of prefer Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And so I think that's how we landed on Brooklyn.
Did you consider any other, like, because there's also, you said Queens initially, right?
Yeah, we were looking at Queens. We're also looking at Long Island City. I liked Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I think obviously there's still more exploring that I need to do. I think for me, Queens was an option, but I feel like as a first timer in New York, Brooklyn felt enough in the vibe of New York, but not too tucked away where I'm so away from everything.
I see.
So that's why we like Brooklyn's in like a good happy medium for us.
Yeah.
And we have some friends that live there. So we're like, okay.
That's a big, I feel like when I think back to my New York experience, I highly underestimated the necessity of having community. And I know you and Ray have already, like you said, you have some friends out there, but how are you thinking about building community out there, and how, like, have you already like contacted people? And
Yeah, I have like a handful of individual friends that I could call on. Like I did like, hi Leah, I'm going to call you up for sure. But like I just have some random, like I have different friends from different walks of my life that do live there. And so I think the first thing is really just to like reconnect and build that relationship again. So I am the type to be like, hey, I'm in town. Would you love to grab coffee with me?
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to ask.
Yeah.
So
I think that's very, very important as you go into a new city and a new place, like to just put it out there.
Yeah. So and also like when I announced that I was going to New York, a lot of people messaged me saying, hey, let's grab coffee when you're back. I live in New York now. I was like, oh wow, like I didn't realize like how many people live in New York.
Yeah.
So that's for sure the first thing I'm going to do is lean into those connections.
Yeah.
And then also we have Ray's friends too. So just like now that we're a couple, like his network is also my network. So like that's the first thing I'm going to do. But I will say that Ray and I both said like, I think we both want to get settled in first. Like just I think that's something different from when I was in my 20s. I would be like, let's go find people to hang out with right away.
Yeah.
In my 30s, I'm just like, let's get everything situated. Let's feel like we have our grind and our routine down. And then let's just start. Then let's branch out.
Yeah.
So different. Yeah, but you said you didn't have community back there?
No, I mean, I feel like I went there and I was so laser focused on, I'm going to try to get a job. And that was my job and apartment. Those were my two priorities. I didn't think about friends. I didn't think about any. Luckily for me, I have very good friends who like were looking out. And so anytime they were out there and they're like, hey, I know you're in New York, they called me up to hang out, and then they would introduce me to their friends.
That's nice.
And so through my friend Danny from high school, and it was crazy. Like I met some people through him who were then I met other people through them and became kind of like more constant hangout people, I guess. But yeah, I just highly underestimated that. And I also had a tendency, I think, to your point about like when you are moving to a new place and you're struggling with like, oh, I'm trying to save money. I was like, oh, people want to go out. And I'm like, I don't have a job. And
New York's expensive.
New York's expensive.
Yeah.
All the socializing is around drinking, paying for drinks. And when you're a girl, they're like, oh, you can just go and get like free drinks. And I was like, yeah, but that's like, I mean, yes, you can do that. And there's nothing wrong to some degree, right? But that I always feel like then there's a feeling of wanting to return something. I don't know. So I struggled so much to strike that balance between being able to preserve like going out and interacting with people for my mental wellness versus like saving money and all those things. So if there's any advice that I could offer for anyone who's kind of going through that grind is let people help you and let people, like, it's okay to kind of, I always felt so guilty about someone's like, I'll buy you this right now because, you know, don't worry. And I was like, oh, I feel so, but I think New York, especially of all places, or any major metropolitan city and any community you go into where you're grinding and you're trying to make things work, it's okay to let people help you. And then you kind of give it in return. So now when I'm in a place, like if someone comes to me and I know that I know you're going through it, like, I'll buy you a drink, you know, like I'll treat you to a meal. It's okay.
Oh my gosh, you're like bringing back so many memories of when I first moved to LA.
Yeah.
Too. You're like
right.
It's just that moment of like new territory.
Yes.
You don't want to come off, you know what I mean? Because you're trying to make a good impression, but
you're
you
trying
also
to make
feel
a good
kind
impression.
of this balancing act you're constantly doing.
Yeah.
Like, oh man.
That hustle.
Oh man. Oh man. I just, brings back memories. I just remember being at home just waiting for any roommates to come in so I could talk to someone.
Oh.
I know.
Yeah.
Ugh. I'm sure all of you are also wanting to know more about this New York story of Janet, you know, because obviously we hear that she finally found her apartment in Chelsea, but she is sharing this apartment with, 3 people and a boyfriend. And I know the end of the story because I know you're back in LA. But what can you fill us in the blanks of what happened in between? Did you get a job? Like,
yeah. So I think, or not, I think, I know, unfortunately, because of this like back and forth of not being in New York right away and kind of going, like when I said that when the program ended, I really did have, it's probably like a month or two to really lock in a job. And I actually did have what probably would have been an offer for like initially, but because I got psyched out and I didn't have proper guidance on how to navigate the job hunting process, I was told you should never take the first job offer you get.
Oh.
And so I kind of like, I messed that up. I didn't communicate properly. I tried to then get a bunch of other meetings and I just navigated it poorly. But regardless, that meant that at the end of like, I was in New York for a couple of months, basically unemployed. And I got the sense now, okay, I'm probably not going to get a job in advertising for the next X amount of months. We're also entering into the winter time near the end of the year. That's like usually when people are not hiring. So I knew I still need to do something because New York City is also one of those places where like people work all the time. And when you're not working, it's like really isolating. Like, and just to sit in your room where my window looked out into the courtyard with like zero sunlight.
Oh no.
And it was horrible. And I remember I had friends who were like, I'll give you my Netflix password so you can watch. Because even then I was like trying to save money. I was like, I don't want to spend money on anything.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So I told myself I should just get any job now. Just like get something so you have some sort of regular schedule. So I ended up working at a cupcake shop called Crumbs. I don't even know if they're in business anymore. They make these like fat ass giant cupcakes. And it was in the Upper East Side. And I remember it felt like a nice, pleasant reprieve because I was so used to like being in New York and like trying to grind and like go grab coffee with people. And everything was like so fast paced and rough and harsh. And the Upper East Side was like, you know, like it's like moms and strollers and like old women. And it was cupcakes. And so I ended up working, I think it was like only like 20 hours a week part-time where I would go in and, you know, kind of like alongside these random like I guess they were like sometimes in between like summer jobs like high school and college kids and then just like serving cupcakes, learning how to I had to go through like the Starbucks training of how to make like lattes, and I don't know, it was don't ask me to make a drink. I don't know.
Wait, so how long were you at this cupcake job, and like did you stay with that?
Yeah, for a couple of months, and then I ended up going into an internship back in, or it's like an internship for a smaller advertising firm through the program that I did.
Okay.
And at the end of, I think I was there for maybe a couple of months. And at the end of it, honestly, I had my moment where it was 8 months in New York and I thought, am I truly happy? I've now landed this job. It wasn't the job that I wanted in advertising, but it would have gotten me into maybe more positions, like if I had the tolerance to stay there for longer. But at this point, I was like, I know I'm not happy here. And I know I'm not loving advertising enough to want to stay here. And it was a little bit of me having to pull back and be like, okay, like you need to make the call that it's okay to move home, that you're not happy. This is not the city for you at this time. This is not the job for you at this time. And it was so hard at that point for me to not look at that as a failure.
Yeah.
But yeah. And I now I look back in hindsight, I'm really glad I had that experience. But man, was it tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after your 8 months, was it kind of like, because I think sometimes people tend to reevaluate where they are because a lease is up or something. But was it more for your like, was your lease up or just like,
That's a good question. I actually don't know. The place that I was at, I think at that point we were month to month.
Oh, okay. So you had the flexibility to
I had the flexibility to break the lease. I will say this is the one time where I left it wasn't even a job, it was an internship type thing. I wish I had done that better. I know that the best way to do is to give 2 weeks. It was one of those situations where I was so miserable. I woke up in the morning, I walked to work and I just went to, and I felt bad. It was a guy who was like one of our TA instructors at the program I did. He was the one that connected me because he got a job at that place. And he's like, we have an internship opening. And I went to him and I was like, I'm sorry, I got to go back to California. I'm like, I'm really unhappy. I got to do this. And he's like, oh, we shouldn't just like tell them you're leaving now. This is like not a good way to exit. I was like, I know. I'm sorry. I know that this is like professionally, this is not professional. This is not ideal, but I was like, I have to make the call right now. I can't, I'm just like so unhappy. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. Did you book your ticket back right away?
I don't even remember the details, to be honest. Yeah, probably.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I think that says a lot to the point where like, you're the brink of like, I just can't do this anymore.
Yeah. I woke up and I was just like, I'm not happy. I'm going to make the call. And then I went back to California.
Yeah. Do you feel like leaving New York, like, did you feel like a distaste for New York? You're like, oh, this represents a sense of fail. I don't, because you didn't fail, to be honest, because you're here now. But like that moment in time,
at that moment, it was a like, and in hindsight, yes, I was being extra hard on myself. But yeah, for a long time, both New York City and anything dealing with like the advertising world was really like like it just left like I had not very good pleasant like
memories
of it. Yeah.
How did you get over, because obviously I've been to New York with you, and we both have a good time now together.
Yeah.
Did you have to go through a period of like, I can't go to New York for a little bit, and did you get over that? Like, how were you able to get to a place where like you could visit New York without feeling of like that negative
The negative
memory?
energy. Yeah. I mean, it was always like less about the place and more about the idea, I think, of going out and chasing your dreams. Maybe that's for me. Like it was less about the city, it was what the city represented to me, which is this idea of, oh, let me go out and like chase my dreams and do all, like to me that became like, whoa, do you understand how hard you can fall or how much that can test you when you do that? I might have not gone back to visit until I went back with you and Helen in 2017.
Oh, really?
I think, or was it 18 that we went back?
Mm.
Because I remember when we went back that time, I had such a pleasant, like I was able to really soak in like, oh, the New York bagel experience and going to your local bodega.
Yeah.
But before that, it was, I just had a lot of memories of walking those streets. It went in a very like negative mindset. And New York is funny in that like, you would feel that way, but there were still, it's like there are beautiful moments and people watching and all of those things, but maybe just like my headspace was so gross that
I have 2 questions to ask you because it makes me think about a conversation I had with my friend Sally.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes when I hear about your story, it sounds like kind of like a dream unfulfilled or a dream crushed, and I don't want to put it that way, but
no, that's a great.
Do you think after that experience you were able to pursue your dreams again, or how did that perspective on dreams just change for you?
ABG was really hard for me to go full time.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, or not or just this is why the decision to go full time with ABG, because it was that for me was the first time where I was like, okay, I finally achieved a place of stability, and I felt really foolish and silly for trying to pursue my dreams and just go out there and do anything. And to me, I mean, granted, obviously, us going into full time into ABG it's kind of like you're saying you're doing. I was in my 30s when we did that, right?
Yeah.
So maybe me going into ABG full time is like now you're going to New York City. It was my next chapter of taking another leap and doing it in a more or like in a more strategic way. But for me, I think I became very like practical for many years after that, because I felt like I tried to let me chase my dream and I got burned. I like walked right into fire.
Yeah, no, that makes
ABG for me was the redemption of that, right?
Oh, I love that. Oh, I love the redemption of that. I could kind of relate. Maybe that's like a small slice because I feel like your experience in New York, that sounds heart-wrenching to me. And I'm so sorry you gone through that, but at the same time, I feel like it made you really strong. Yeah, or more aware of like what you could handle.
Oh yeah. I think that was that probably of all the periods in my life was the hardest and when I was tested the most.
Yeah. Similar to you, I didn't want to leave my job for ABG.
Yeah.
Remember? I think for me, like I guess like my phase 1 of dream chasing was moving to LA.
Yes.
And I also got burned of how unstable it can be.
Yes.
And living on like going to debt. You're like, oh crap, this sucks. And so when I had my job, I was like, I finally felt a sense of stability that I could rely on. So ABG came around, I was like, but I have an income and I have benefits. Do you want me to leave this? So it was tough.
Yeah.
But I think now where I am, I guess call it phase 2, I feel very like happy of where we landed with ABG. And that's why it surprises me sometimes if I'm losing this sense of inspiration. I feel guilty for feeling that way. But I also told myself, this is the longest I've been on a job.
Yeah.
It's easy. We do, and usually you're like, you have like a whole team of people to work with. I love you and Helen, but it's the same people. And it's different. And so New York for me is another dream, right?
Yeah,
but Sally asked me, she stepped over, she visited from SF. She's like, Mel, does it scare you? What if things don't work out in New York for you? Have you thought about that? What if things just don't work out the way you thought about it? And I think I said, I was like, I never thought about that. And I think I said to her, I was like, I think I'll be okay. Because I think based on my previous experiences with dream chasing, I think I put so much of everything on those dreams. And granted, yes, parts of it came true, parts of it I was challenged, but at the same time, I think going through those experiences, I don't put so much weight on this. But to me, New York is a different type of dream because I'm come prepared. Like LA, I came in not preparing how lost I would feel.
Yeah.
Not knowing how isolated I would feel.
Yeah.
But I was able to get through it, by somehow, you know,
Yes.
you learn tools.
Yeah.
So I think with New York, I'm prepared to feel isolated. I'm prepared to feel all these things.
You're expecting it already.
Exactly. I think that's the thing, the expectation. So with that, I'm kind of keeping my expectations at bay for this fulfillment of a dream. It's more like, it's kind of like the idea of my dream is more like, I'm just going to be there and live.
Yeah.
And there are things I want to do, but if things don't work out, it's okay.
Yeah.
That's how I'm kind of framing it now, you know?
I like that. And I was going to say, like, what is the definition of
a dream?
A dream. Yeah. Because I think maybe you came to LA much more like wide-eyed and
Yeah.
like, or whatever you want to say. But I think for you, just going to New York, period, will be a success, right?
I think
Like,
that's what it is. Like, I don't have my expectations. I don't know. Like, maybe I think, yes, I have things I want to do, but I don't
Yeah.
think the expectations are that strong. The main thing I think what I'd feel accomplished is by being there for as long as I can.
yeah.
Because I've been told by some mutual friends of ours, and this is where I feel the most challenged. They go, Mel, you're never going to survive New York. Or they said, Mel, you're gonna hate it. You're gonna come back. Or Mel, you're not gonna last a summer there. You're not gonna last a winter. Oh, winter, you're a Cali girl. So when I hear that, I'm go, watch
me. Yeah.
That's just I'm like, let me just do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even though when I went there for that week to apartment hunt, you best believe I'm like, oh shit, I love 72-degree weather. I'm screwed. 40-degree, crap, I'm screwed. But I told myself, I was like, it is what it is, Mel. Just deal with it.
yeah.
So I was like telling myself, I'm gonna just deal with it.
yeah.
Versus being like, I'm gonna love it. You think I'm gonna love it? I didn't tell myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
That's
like-
fair. Your expectation is not like, you don't have a romanticized view of what this is going to be like.
But I think in some ways, by me saying I'll deal with it, I found myself romanticizing even more and liking it more.
Interesting.
Like when I was there and I was walking around in my 2 layers and my coats and everything.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't feel my face, but I don't mind it.
Aw.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think it's just like, it's a combination of like not just being like accepting what comes at me
Yeah.
and knowing that I'll have the tools to deal with it. And
Yeah.
hard times are going to come,
Yeah.
but also just watch me mentality, you know?
Damn. I'm going to be watching.
Yeah.
We're all going to be watching.
we're gonna watch. I'm warning you, I'm going to have sad moments. This is the thing. It's like, I'm not saying I'm not going to have bad moments.
No,
They're going to
yeah.
happen. Like, I know they are.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be blinded to those moments.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. I think you are very well prepared. And for you, like to your point, I think having the negative experience or not having the challenging experiences, I think is exactly what you are wanting.
Yes.
So
I think it's part of it.
all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation about New York City. Please, let's wish Mel all of the luck. She won't need it, but she will. We'll still send her some luck.
I love luck anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's like if you're in New York City, leave a comment, or if you have tips on, I don't know, what can people leave us for tips?
I think maybe just I may not be the only one moving to a new city. So if you have someone, you're also someone that moved across country or like moving into a very different environment. What are some tips you'd give our fellow ABG community on how to survive this time?
Yes. Moving to a new city.
Yes.
What are some tips that you have to acclimate and to build your new community, to build your new home?
And with that, we'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.